invasion of Poland and more than half of Europe prompted Phase 1 of World War II. Nazi soldiers killed so many Jewish people through the genocide, the Holocaust. But during Phase 3 of World War II, a war between the US and Japan started. Because the US became the #1 supplier of military arms to countries in exchange for allies and massive military power, keeping track of other possible states that might overpower them was a must, much more restricting their expansion. Japan, wanting to expand its empire to combat the scarcity of resources, especially oil, that the United States was the #1 supplier of at that time, attacked Pearl Harbor, a US naval base, marking the start of the Pacific War. As an act of revenge for what the Japanese army did and their unwillingness to surrender, the US initiated the first use of an atomic bomb, 3 years in the making, in an armed conflict in Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and 3 days later in Nagasaki. The utilization of the first atomic bomb in real life ended World War II after the Japanese finally surrendered to the United States, nearly a month after the bombings. The cost of war is the lives of innocent people, and signaled the dawn of a nuclear age. Furthermore, the President of the United States during World War II believed that he saved the Japanese people's lives as well, as prolonging the war would result in more deaths. In the same year that World War II ended, a 45-year-long Cold War started as the alliance of Great Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union that was built during the war that led to victory against Germany began to fall apart. Keep your friends close but your enemies closer, right? The United States and the Soviet Union, Socialist Republics, or USSR, were both placed in great power. As a result, there became an indirect political tug-of-war. But just like how unpreparedness does not result in something good, like what happened to Japan, the Soviet Union's goal of proving that they were one step ahead, a Chernobyl explosion occurred that is said to be 10 times more disastrous than the previous bombings. As part of the 15 countries that belonged to the USSR, a now abandoned city in Ukraine called Chernobyl was tasked to build a nuclear power plant. Little did they know it would mark the worst nuclear disaster vis-a-vis the defeat of the whole USSR. Because of isolationism, lack of safety culture, flawed design, untrained personnel, and mistakes of the Soviet government, the dangerous operating site of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded on April 26, 1986. What was really the cause of the explosion? As we go back to 1986, you will know why it happened decades ago, signaling a victory to the US. Remember to subscribe to Science Times. Assume you are an engineer who has all the knowledge about what a nuclear power plant is. Nuclear power plants act like grand steam engines that convert the thermal energy from the steam of boiling water to mechanical work and produce power or electricity. Now, these nuclear power plants have nuclear reactors where nuclear fission, a chain reaction inside its nuclear core, happens. Here, a neutron collides with an atom like uranium and plutonium to break it into two, further releasing new neutrons. The more atoms are split, and the more neutrons are released, a nuclear power plant can produce more heat and radiation. The produced heat is what boils the water, further creating steam that will be turned into electricity. However, as nuclear fission is unstable and can lead to the creation of nuclear bombs, it has to be controlled. And when we say controlled, like really controlled. Here, control rods in the nuclear reactors come into place. These control rods are supposed to absorb the neutrons to slow down nuclear fission and lessen the production of heat and radiation to avoid a possible explosion. The rods are placed in and out of the reactor as boiling water is continuously pumped, releasing the steam to neutralize the heat while producing electricity. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant consisted of 4 nuclear reactors called Reaktor Bolshoi Mochnostki Kanalny, or RBMKs. These are Russian words that translate to high-power channel-type reactor. These RBMKs are dubbed as fundamentally faulty, having a built-in instability, by an American physicist, and the explosion of the RBMK reactor 4 further proved it. Now you're back to 1986, April 25th, the day before the explosion. The operators of Chernobyl 4 were ordered by the Soviet government to do a safety test on the reactor of how long the turbines can spin and still produce electricity after the said nuclear reactor is shut down. This is a test of how long its spare power can last during an emergency. As the reactor had to be at a dangerously low power state, the operators planned to lessen its power slowly. But because a nearby coal plant shut down, power grid officials told the operators to delay the test to keep nearby homes lit. There was a 10-hour delay, and they were eventually pressed for time, and the night shift staff would have to run the test, which they are not trained to do. The night shift operators sped it up by putting a lot of control rods in at once, slowing down nuclear fission. They had no choice and are pressured to do as they are told. This is where the bigger problem starts. Because the nuclear fission was lowered down rapidly, it developed a neutron poison, or neutron-absorbing atom called xenon, that stopped the chain reaction and placed the reactor at a level lower than what was needed for the test. So, as xenon continued to absorb neutrons, the operators found it hard to initiate a chain reaction, even by pulling out the majority of the control rods. A nuclear engineer stated that in this kind of power instability, a 24-hour interval is what is needed to allow the neutron poison to dissipate. Yet, on the early morning of April 26th, the deputy chief engineer still pushed through the test, leaving RBMK Reactor 4 with only 6 inserted out of 211 control rods. This puts the reactor in danger as the minimum control rods inserted should be 30. With the disconnected safety systems, Reactor 4 exploding was already an impending doom. Once the power was back to the accepted level for the test, the operators began shutting down the turbine engine. But with the intention to shut it down, it did not happen because of how the control rods were made. The neutron poison of each of them had a top of graphite, which is not a neutron absorber. The control rods fueled this chain reaction. Because of the power surge and lack of knowledge about the effect of graphite in the faulty reactor, the operators began inserting back almost all of the control rods to shut it down fast. Mistake after mistake just fueled the chain reaction ever more. Then you guessed it, Chernobyl 4 exploded at exactly 1:23 in the morning. The supposed emergency shutdown destroyed the reactor and brought about long-term effects on the environment and the people. 2 operators are killed immediately in the explosion, and many more deaths of operators and firemen all tallied within the first 3 months. Burning materials are released into the air, and the graphite from the control rods caused a massive fire. About 50 tons of nuclear fuel seeped through the air and into the atmosphere. The Chernobyl explosion posed many dangers to the health of the people during that time. 116,000 people have been relocated far away from the explosion site, but with them are the psychosocial effects of what happened that early morning of April 26, 1986. Because of the collective mistakes made by the whole Soviet government, Ukraine is estimated to only completely recover after 20,000 years, which is too long for errors that should have been easily avoided. To know more about the Chernobyl explosion, read the articles linked below. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Science Times to be transported back in time once again. Thanks for watching!